I'm overwhelmed to be here. It's a privilege and an honor to be here before you. I'm just full of tears right now because I see so many loving faces, so many people that I've traveled different roads with and different life experiences with over the years. Many years have gone by with so many of you and new experiences that have brought me new horizons and new beginnings and new understanding of myself. And so I really welcome you. I'm so glad you're here. I have some members of family that are here, and I consider all of you my family, but it's so good to see all of you. I have just arrived in from the canoe journey, so you may have heard about that. So I've been retired from the canoe, so I don't paddle as much anymore. I have recently, I did get to go across the bay and the healing of the bay with the Skalalam canoe, which is my own tribal canoe, and that I just sobbed all the way across because we worked so hard to clean that bay. And so that was an honor, so I was able to paddle with the Skalalams. And it's not difficult for me to paddle all day for 10 hours. It's difficult to get out of the canoe. That's why the chair is here. I have someone here that has taken me out of the canoe, someone big, has taken me out of the canoe for the last 26 years. He sits right up, he's sitting right there. Raise your hand, big. Oh, that's his nickname, by the way. You want me to give him your real name, Tom Curley? He has been there with us all these years. I will begin now. And I don't want any of you to be uncomfortable, but I'd like you to be able to stand with me to thank Creator for our existence. Raise your hands like this. That symbolizes that you're lifting up yourself and everything around you. Creator, see us standing here in a sacred manner. We come with good hearts. Our minds are good. We are interested in the world and what it brings. We want to thank you for the earth and the sky and the waters and the air that we breathe. It's on everyone in this room and all of their families and spread out across the universe. Thank you, Creator, for allowing my existence in their existence. Oho. So, what I would like you to do for me now is to sit there and just pause after I ask this question for just a few minutes. And what I am going to request that you think about your question. Keep it brief and just ask. Because in this brochure, it says here that the journey begins in the 1800s, Salish tradition, and ends in the modern day social and cultural resurgence. How have the tribes survived as a people? What is the life for them in the 20th century? What are the cultural and social aspects that hold their society together in an age of technology? Well, that's a dissertation. But I have a belief, because we're human beings, that we have our questions. Here is the, sorry. Somebody else I love walked in. You see me crying and I'm being not very, very dignified. It's because I'm not. That goes with my nickname. Oh, there's somebody. Oh. Another raven. I'm in the raven canoe and there they are coming in. So I'm back with you. I want you to be thinking of those things that you want from me and ask of me. Here's the caveat. I won't answer them directly, but I want you to go ahead and just ask anything you want, knowing what the question was, what those questions are, because when I agreed to do this, I asked the committee who asked me to come, who do they want? I can teach the course. I could do it again and again and again. What do they want? And back and forth, we went back and forth until they got out of me. I wanted to hear the voices of the committee. I wanted to hear what they thought to ask me to come here today, because I don't come out very often. And I wasn't just going to come and just be on the stage, the sage on the stage. So, not that I'm not. No. So, those are the questions that they said the committee wanted, they heard that the people wanted to know. So with those questions in mind, that was in the brochure, just sit there and just raise your hand, stand up, and I can hear you, but if they can't, they'll bring you a microphone. So just start out peppering me with questions. I'm going to give it only about 3 or 4 minutes, and then we're going to stop. Go ahead.
How do the tribes communicate with each other? They talked about not being any paths to the Olympics, but I feel there were a lot of trade routes to the Olympics in times past. And I wonder how the tribes communicated with each other before other people came in.
Remember, I don't answer him. I'm going to leave it into my lecture. Pauline?
What are the things that young tribal people want today, or what is it that they express that they want with their lives today?
In modern day, what is the tribe's relationship with the federal government? Like, from my understanding is that it's very much like the tribes have sovereign soil and they're a nation unto themselves. They don't really answer to anyone else apart from that, but I've never been clear on what that relationship is.
How has your understanding of family manifested itself in your work in the community?
How do you continue to hold the sacred?
In what ways has the council that you sit on been influenced by our current day society and past, not excluding the past?
How are all of the wonderful artisans and crafts and those kind of skills still being carried on today with the younger tribal members?
I graduated from Chief-Sel High School in Seattle. Sel, I don't know if that's correct pronunciation, but
It is.
I've been hearing some sort of conflicting stories about him.
About school or about self?
Chief-Sel himself.
Conflicting stories?
Or maybe not enough information.
How can the educational institutions, including Olympic College, best serve the needs of the tribal nations?
Is that it for a while? I will stop and ask again as your mind soaks up the points that I want to make today, and if I don't hit your point later on, I'll give you another chance to ask and I'll answer you directly. I appreciate you standing in the name of the Creator is what I call that, and it's not out of disrespect for any religion, the formal religions that are out there, but tribal people believe that there is a creator or creators, and that belongs to the earth and the sky and the ground and the air we breathe and the water. So for us, it's an all-encompassing notion. So that's how I say in your words, pray. And so thank you very much for that. I feel honored that you stood and that you respected my wishes. Let's see, I'm going to start this with a little bit of history. And so I have a board up here, you may not hear, but it's my cheat sheet, and I have some papers here to answer some of the questions about Native Americans and how we are today and what we are doing. But I need to give you a little background. Now, you've all heard about the tragedy that has happened to Native Americans in this country, right? You've heard about it, you've read about it, and the books are inaccurate and all of those things. This is not going to be a story of sadness, because we're here. We're not anywhere. We're here. It's not about sadness. It's about resilience, self-efficacy, efficacy of community. And so my story is not sad, although it has sad events in it. Because my people, I say my people, I'm talking about my people across the United States that say that they're part of a nation that was aboriginal to this country, because it was inhabited by many, many, many people. And we've lost the names of many of them. We've lost the language. The languages are starting to leave. The Navajo have kept it. They have kept their language. The Hopi have kept their language. Some of the large tribes have their languages. The Skalaalams have revived. Our last living speaker, Angela, she lived to be like 99, I think, and she was the last speaker. So our language is starting to come forth, although it was called dead, but it's not dead. It was asleep. And the people is bringing it back. To be able to have an understanding, I cannot speak for every tribe, but I can talk about the essence of the tribes. And I said that in the Creator Prayer. I believe that to the core. I've been part of Indian country since I can remember. So I'm going to give you a bit of history. So one of the words I have up here is, some of you are experiencing some of the terror that we did many generations ago. You're beginning to feel what it feels like to be oppressed. There are things happening that are starting to make our population feel oppressed. Well, in an Indian country, it's a blink of an eye, okay? You're getting a hint of what it is possibly politically, and I'm not going to go in political on you, but I want you to embrace that inside of you. Because politically speaking, Native Americans, there's another bump in the road. Because as tribal sovereign nations, we are going to continue through that process with the federal government, with the Constitution of the United States, and that's your charge also. So rather than being marred down and what that is, and the feeling of hopelessness and all that, do what the tribes have done. Keep on, keep on. Make sure your Constitution continues, Build it stronger than it was before, because that's one of the foundations of how my people have survived. Their governments were destroyed 250 years ago. It hasn't been very long. Treaties were made with the tribes. Those were destroyed. Now many people are talking in 2018, that our Constitution is at risk. So feel it, folks. You're still very privileged. You can get up and eat. You can get up and turn on your faucet. You can look around you and find transportation. You can go to the grocery store. You have churches. You have people in your community to turn to. So there's no excuse for putting up with any of it. The tribal nations have been practicing this for generations across the United States. It is only a bump in the road. So that's about as political as I'm going to get, because it is truly a bump in the road. Okay? So when you're feeling that, oh my gosh, stand proud and know you're an American and you're very privileged. Much more so than my people were 250 years ago. And you all know what happened then. We don't have to go do it again, talk about it. So I wanted to bring you on my page to understand, so you can bring that forward. So your voice can speak up if you're in a classroom where it is inaccurate or cruel or unkind towards a Native American or any ethnic group existing. Because we are now incarcerating people again. Oh, how could that happen? Well, it is, people. We've incarcerated people of no other reason except for their nationality. So feel that, those of you who are not from those particular ethnic groups, understand a little bit more about what that is. Feel it in your heart and your spirit now. Because you're walking among us now again. You're feeling that oppression. Okay? And those people that are being oppressed, they're also strong. They will persevere because they have, in a foundation through my teaching career, when they come to me to talk to me about problems at home, or teachers would send people of color to my room and talk to them about it, I start asking about their aunties and uncles. Well, how is your auntie and uncle? Is grandpa? Grandpa, are you worried about grandpa? Oh, do you make great, I start getting them to talk about food. I start talking about things that happen, about what they're doing. Then I know if they're in real trouble in their life or not. Because if they have those things pulled together, and they have a grandma or grandpa to huggle, or they have one that we invent, which is really good, because we've had to invent that because most of our families were killed or whatever, many years ago, just gone. I am really good at inventing family. Okay, I cried when you all came in here because you're my family. I see faces and experiences that I cherish. And that's a skill. That's a skill of the Native American. That's a skill of our tribal journeys right now. There's 10,000 people that have arrived in Puyallup. I sit there and I watch that. And we're family. They're my aunties and uncles and grandpa and grandmas and cousins by the millions. If you want to know the strength, one of the questions, if you want to know what the strength is, that's exactly what it is. 26 years ago, we began that journey with 11 canoes. And now it's 136 people and 10,000 people. And they come, and you won't believe the peace that's there. The loving peace of everybody. Nobody is pushing anybody. The elders get stood up for. If our youth has a chair and I come walking by, sit down, grab kaya. It's a given that I am a precious person, that I am meant to give them leadership as an elder. There's an expectation there of our young people that I'm an elder and I'm expected to have the knowledge and the wisdom to help them. It's the most fantastic thing. And I can't say that's just in my community. I have that from other ethnic groups, including the I don't know what to call you, Germans, Norwegians, and Irish and whatever. So I'll call you non-natives, okay? I don't know what else to say. I might offend you. I don't want to offend you. Well, I might tonight, and that's okay. Just let me know. If I do, and I'll take care of you. I'll come and rub your back or something. Oh, it's okay, honey. It'll be all right. You'll get past this too, you poor thing. Because I can't be calling names or saying anything that would cause you too much harm. And that's the part of the resilience that's happening, that has happened with my people and people of color. I love it. I've walked into many cultures and I sit down and it happens. The people start rejoicing. And that comes down to the basic thing of caring for somebody else. Totally. It's amazing. We look for the historic relevance of this and that. But it's there, everywhere. If you need to fight for which right, do it. We don't have to kill people to do it. Okay? We can just do it. Now, I have my little cheat up here. I had political, social, a little bit of community, so now I'm going to do a little bit of history, and this is where it's really kind of profound, I think, in reality. I have this inverted triangle, and I started a PhD program in clinical psychology, and I had a proposal, and then I had to go to Seattle University to get into another program. So I thought, I am 60 years old, I'm 65 years old, I don't need that. I don't need to go to practice. So I set that aside and went to Seattle University because I needed to work. I did lose all that prestige. That would have been nice. But only when I'm on stage when I was a trustee. Tribe would just say, oh, here comes Snooki. Oh. That's my nickname. Family calls me that, so big over here. Several people in here, if they say, Snooki, can I have this question? I'll answer, and you're going to go, I've had tribal chairmen. We were sitting in the meeting. It was actually the trustee meeting, and Leonard Forsman and Jeremy came, the two chairmen, to give our past president gift, and they're saying, well, we appreciate Snooki. She's doing this and she's doing that, and she's been in the community, and Snooki has done this, and she's, do you remember that? Yeah. And everybody's going, what is a Snooki? What is a Snooki? My goodness. Nobody knows what a Snooki is. Well, here she is. This is me. And so I carry that family name. I have a Shawa baby, which is a child of the cougar, or cougar baby is my tribal name. Okay. I have many names, but those are the primary ones. Here's my inverted historic chart. We have non-native men way up here. Politically, socially, and in the community, they're way up here. They're Doors will open for them. My poor husband, he understood that when he married me. It made him very angry many times when he came in, and it's my husband over here, he's frowning at me, but he understood what it was like to be a white man. Is that okay? German, Irish, and Danish, and Finnish. And when we went into a restaurant, he and his sister sitting for dinner and everything, and they would address them as a couple. Or they would wait on him and not me. And so he was very mad one time when he was going across the mountain on a trip or something, and so he said, "There's a person following you." I says, "Yeah, they think I'm stealing." And so I about decided to have fun with it because, life is full of fun if you find it, right? So there's this person. I'm there in this gift shop, and so I noticed that person following me around. This is only one story of many. And so I started little tiny items, and then I put it down, and then I go to another place, and I went all around the store like that, so she would follow me around, and to make sure I didn't steal anything. Well, I probably could buy and sell her, but she thought I was going to steal something. And those are only a few of the stories that would make a person sad. But I want you to understand that word efficacy and resilience. If you can find fun and joy in anything, you might as well. Because there's sometimes when you can't, when life happens and it's difficult to endure. But those things have really happened to his heartbreak until we had to sit down to talk about it. Because he didn't know about that going to happen to him or what racism was. So he finally got over it a little bit, but don't mess with me. He's a big guy. Actually, I have two big guys. Oh, I have three of them here that, no, you don't be messing with me, right, Kurt? Yeah. Oh, yeah, I got my bodyguards. But seriously, that is no fun. So when you see those baby injustices, we talk about bullying in the field, out there in the schools, those are not small things. So I won't go into my school career. So anyway, so there's a lot of privileges that come to being a non-native man, politically, socially, culturally, in every way you can imagine. Whether you're rich or poor, you have those privileges, okay? It's a fact. Go to the statistics. Remember I was in that program? That was my study. Because I was studying Native American elder females. I have my proposal written. Then non-Native women. They're down here. They've gone through their trials and error, and I have stories about that. So I thought this feminine thing was really fun. It was good, right? I'm a woman. Yeah, I'm a woman. And so I consented to go into this little group of women, and we're sitting there, and they're having all these discussions about being a woman, and I'm just so thrilled about being among the women and everything. And then woman, she stood up and she looks at me and she says, "Well, I just want to know, Darlene, when are you most discriminated against, as a woman or as a Native American?" I was stunned. Now, I could have been more reasonable, but it hit me so hard at that moment that I was separated as being either a woman or Native American. I can guarantee you I was kind outside. So you see, I still have a temper. but inside I was stormy. But I do understand that the worst enemy in this world is ignorance. And if you meet ignorance with anger and hostility, so none of your questions will ever offend me. I will understand that it's because you don't know. And ignorance is not something you have to be ashamed of, because you gain wisdom by asking those questions that you don't know about. And for me, everybody's in the first grade, because those are the questions. It's out of innocence that you ask those questions, right? So I did learn that early on in the 60s to keep that generous heart going. That's the way my grandmother taught me. Even though it blew me over, even though that lady was following me around, I had to remember the wisdom of the elderly women telling me, my elders, to have that generous heart. Important, but difficult to do. Right? It's difficult to do. So, non-Native women, they have a lot of privileges. I put them here because of their struggle. I always like to make the men more privileged than they sometimes are. And, and then I put down other ethnic groups, Native and Black men and Black women, as we go down the chart. Native men, okay? And then Native women, okay? I'm looking at my professor up there. She's going, yeah. Elderly, tribal, Native women. That's me. But when I started it, I didn't know I was elderly, but now I know I'm elderly. That's why I have that chair there. Okay? So when I did the study on women, it made me cry. Because you know what happens when we lose our elderly? We lose a legacy. Our legacy is going away. So it is the foundation of our people to respect our elderly, the people who are old. And it's important. So when I read that, when I wrote my paper and my proposal to go in, I was stunned to know that we weren't even a blip on the statistics. That each passing year, there's less and less of us. The good news, I can tell you this about the population though, is that there's a lot of elderly people coming up behind me. Okay? There are a lot of them coming up behind me. So what's sad is we're losing the legacy of the ones who would remember in the 1800s and early 1900s. Can you wrap your head around that? Okay? So that is really a truism that isn't there, but we're way down there. Before anything happens, it gets screened through. So many women understand, they may not understand that they pretty much climbed over the Native American woman, maybe because they didn't know they were or whatever, but they did. But not in Indian country. The women were the creators, and I'll talk about that a little later if you remind me. So that's pretty much what I wanted to say about that. So now, when you talk about, I gotta make sure our time, is short. So, culture, ethnic identity, and lineage. Okay? Culture, you can go into any tribal nation, even the 37 tribes of Western Washington. Each one of those cultures will be different. They'll be similar, but they'll be different. Okay? This is historic now. The ethnic identity, each of those ethnic identities that are Native American may have many other ethnics mix in them. So your ethnic past, your ancestors may be different. So ethnic and culture is different. Lineage, my lineage is long. My background runs up and down clear close to Alaska and to Vancouver Island. Because my grandpa, and I can get to that a little later, my grandpa was, and my grandma was considered highborn, so they went up and they found marriages in the potlatch. And so as not to mix marrying your first cousin, you know. So the lineages is important differentiation for that. So those are different things that you have to sort out when you talk about Native Americans. Native Americans are supposed to be enrolled, to be recognized by the federal government of the United States, to be recognized as a viable member and a citizen of a tribe. Us and poodles. Poodles are registered in order to get AKC, whatever that is, and Native Americans, right? So we are enrolled in our tribes. That was pretty humiliating at first, I think. Back in the early 1900s, we were corralled into pens and non-citizens of the United States, and you know that history, pretty brutal. But as we turned it around, as it's addressing the question, that family, as families, we turned that around and said, oh, we have a constitution. We live as a nation within a nation. Now that's astounding, but it's true. We are a nation within a nation, living as a now, I'm going to look too big for this, 1938, 28, 29. We became citizens, so we were the last citizens of the United States after everybody else. So put that in your bailiwick. We were considered incarcerated on our own lands. If we left, we were arrested. And so many other bad things. Brutal things. I want to go to the core again of my people. The core is family, traditions, the culture, and primarily identity. There is a lot of pride in knowing that you are a Native American. I am very proud to be S'Klallam. I'm very proud that I'm part of the Suquamish Nation, of the Skokomish Nation, of the Songhees, and the Lummi, and I can go on in my lineage. I am very proud of that. And that extends out to the other tribes in Western Washington. That extends out to my adopted Sioux sister, Faith Spotted Eagle, in Sioux Nation. She took me into her tribe so that I participated in the Sundance. She welcomed me there to do Sundance with her. My adopted Sioux father, Gilbert Walking Bull, the great-grandson of Sitting Bull, they embraced me into their family and their culture and their traditions and ceremonies. I was very privileged to be welcomed into those ceremonies, to be part of the secret ceremonies. And sometimes Native Americans for many, many years have kept that quiet. But it's like on Indianola Beach, the non-natives found out that horse clams were good to eat. Well, they disappeared for a long time. Cockles, oh my gosh, cockles, let's go eat those. Oh, little necks, we'll eat all those up too. Oh, ducks, we'll eat those up too. The berries, what berries? I was sneaking around last week when I was up Canada, and I saw this hanging bush full of salmon berries. I said, quiet, Richard. I said, don't let anybody see me. And I crept through the woods and I picked them and ate them because I didn't want anybody to see them because they'll start eating them all again. that brings us to the environment, right? In a small way, but we eat everything. And eat even those things that we consider the most non-human still love. Is that right? We are observing it right now with the great orca whale, the Klumachin. They can't let that baby go. So you can imagine the grief and the sorrow that's been going on in Indian country for a long time, because statistically we die very fast. So I'm standing before you a miracle. I'm very old and plan to get older. Okay? So I'm a miracle. But not really, because the cultural resurgence came about very strong. I stand on my recent ancestors. My grandfather, my great-grandfather, my great-grandmother, and my grandmother, my great-greats, that tips into the 16th, 17th century that I can find. I stand on their shoulders to stand here before you today. They really are the ones that did the fighting. They're really the ones that have to sign those treaties. I'm looking for it because I was going to read it to you. If you'll bear with me for just a second. Article January 26, 1855. Article 1. The said tribes and bands of Indians hereto cede, relinquish, and convey to the United States all their rights, title, and interest in the lands and the country occupied by them, bound and described as followed. It's real, people. It's not something you read in a history book. This happened to my grandpa 165 years ago. He was on the first council. And this happened over and over again to the Squamish, the Squaxin, the Nooksack, all those tribes up and down the coast. This is what happened. We conveyed to the United States all their rights. However, they gave us the right to run ourselves, right? Because we were just going to kill ourselves off. Or just drink ourselves to death. Well, some of them tried to starve us. After all, they killed their great white man, Custer and many others. He didn't know what he was doing, but they did. We had to go to war. But here we are. They asked us to convey all of our rights, and then they told us what we could do, and then they signed the treaty and said that we have the rights to an education, that they would give us $2,000 in that, and some, cheese or something, and to keep our family fed. And so in that paper, that document that was signed, they made these promises, the federal government made these promises to our people, and over the last few years, the tribal councils started to learn. What you don't know is only ignorance. But they were very bright people, so they started thinking, well, we can't even leave the reservation, and then they're sending in booze and alcohol. They did that to the armed forces too, so, we weren't the only ones, so, it's a pretty tragic story. But yes, we started to die from what I call cultural depression. Cultural depression is something that I could have wrote that paper on. because it's taken so many of our mothers and fathers, or my generation before me. There's this void. We lost our mothers and fathers. But what I did retain, who was closer to the culture, was the grandmothers and the great-grandmothers, who still held on to their culture and taught the weaving and the way of the land and how to survive without nothing. Okay? They survived without nothing. We didn't eat that cheese anyway. We didn't like that macaroni. It wasn't so good either. So, over the years, we took that Constitution that they offered us and those promises that they made, and year by year by year became strong nations. And we're strong. I am so proud of my people. The tribal councils, the general council who talks about it, who continues to grow and learn and not forget the culture in terms of the tribal journey, weaving, the foods, the environment. If you hear a tribe is out there fighting for a bay or a beach, please get there and fight with us. We say Point Julia, what is that bay called? Anyway, over there in Little Boston, we fought Pope and Talbot and the big companies, you know, the developers. They wanted to put all these houses on that end, and we fought for 12 years as a tribal government to stop it. Along with the county, many in the county, it was amazing. I was really like, oh, the county people? No, that can't be true. But they were there. Our joint voices together saved that beach. Because when I was a little girl, my dad and I would go down into Jeff Head, he's Suquamish, go down to Jeff Head, and we'd set our net out. And we'd catch king salmon like that. Okay? We'd eat what we could on the beach, but they were like this. We dragged those gill nets in, and we pulled them in, and then we'd bring them to Seattle and sell them. Okay? So, my people have become strong in terms of the political part of their life. The Constitution is based off of several different tribal ways of life. You know, the Senate and the legislation and that. That's modeled after a Native American. You'll see our names everywhere. So there's fights around you that are fighting for the earth. We try to tell you. Mother Earth is going to get really, really mad. And we're going to blame somebody. No, blame yourself. Do more. Do like the Native Americans are doing. The tribes right now are fighting environmental struggles every day. I am proud of every tribe across this nation doing it. Across this nation, they're fighting for Mother Earth. They're fighting for the air. They're fighting against the oil. It was probably kind of interesting that they were over there fighting and where my sister was, who was the first electoral nominee, Faith Spotted Eagle, for the presidency of the United States. One vote. But it's a beginning, right? She's a wonderful elder. So it isn't this. It's all around you. And I want to share, somebody said, well, what are we doing? So here's some pictures of many years ago, 1995. Big gave these to me, of one of the journeys. Here's one of Bella Bella Bound with Frank. I did keep him big. Who said, let's gather together, even if it's against the law, to have a potlatch journey. It's against the law in Canada and America because religion has to go. You can't take this, you have to take the sacred away from people to kill them, right? It didn't work. Tribal journeys are still alive. I am proud of my people. We took the challenge, and I think there was 11 or 12 that made it to Bella Bella. And now there's 10,000 people. My cousin Eddie, we're touting him. His grandmother was Julia Jacobs. He was raised kind of like an orphan. She took him when nobody else wanted him. He's a great weaver. We are documenting this, what I'm trying to say here. The newsletter, I think this might be Suquamish. The newsletters every month or so come out with what's happening on the tribe. We're showing our youngsters and our oldsters and in-betweens about what's happening in their tribe. Okay. Oh, this is the Suquamish one. Okay. Little Boston. Oh, that's Glallam. I wanted to go out. This has been a journey for 6 months or 9 months. This is from the Quinault tribe. They too are doing the same thing. They have these newsletters, gather their people together, and anybody else that wants to read them, there they are. Quinault Nation Herald, Capital Budget Victories. You know, those governments that didn't want to give us in, they are constitutionally bound to do it. In the courts, in the Supreme Court, they must. Here's another one. The Yakama Nation. I could go to every tribe and find something like this, talking about environment and how we can save it, how we can fix the salmon problem, how to save the rivers, how do we as a people do that? And we've been doing this without very much money, because it takes effort to stand up against tyranny, right? Money helps. It's very good. I love money. It's a good thing. So I can go on. I have so much here. There's just paper after paper. The family, it's a family affair. There's generations of fishermen and huntermen. You know, there's 3 generations of gooey duck divers and salmon fishermen, which is a very good right that we have, okay? So there they are. Over and over again, if you want to know the heart of the people, you have to go out where the heart is and see it and experience it. Very proud of my people. These are all here. The Washington State tribes, there's Leonard Forsman there. He's celebrating Washington tribes. These are all good things. I think I took this from Big. I never gave it back. So there's all the tribes with the little yellow, the little red things there. So the information you want to know from me, I'm only the tip of the iceberg. So let's see. I'm going to sit down. I went through all those things. I don't think they're very interesting. Any questions?
Reading, what was the name of it? I understand that in 1950s, the United States government put a bill across, and they called it the Extermination Bill. Oh, yeah. And I'm curious how the natives were able to deal with that. Blood Struggle. Yeah, Blood Struggle is the book that we were reading.
That would be a book, because the nations came together and fought that against the Congress, and they went to, I think they went to the international nations, all nations too. Because you know, if they can violate our treaties, guess what? You're next. Our treaties are as bound as yours, as ours is in the United States of America. So we came up together as tribal people and fought it in every way we could. Politically, we sent our best to talk to them. We reminded them of their agreement in the law. We have to remind our legislation of the law. So it was the law that won, but it took our effort and many, many people around that. I'm not sure if that answers. It would take a long time to go into the details, but that's basically what it was. Did that? It's still going on. It hasn't quit. But remember, our Constitution is equal to the United States Constitution. No more questions?
Well, I'm confused about the treaties because I keep reading that we're still today breaking treaties. How can that be? I mean, we get taught in school when you grow up that this was all in the past, and yet there's no talk about how it is today happening. And I don't feel the appropriate outrage in this country toward that. Or even, like you said, the knowledge, it's an ignorance factor. I feel ignorant. I don't know what's even true about a lot of the current events.
I don't know how to answer that question. I think you're on the right track, though, because just remember, if you see a struggle of a tribe in a court against even the county to save the land, to save the water, to save anything, get in there and fight them. Go in there and help them, because that's helping the Constitution, your Constitution, my Constitution, and the tribes. Because we have a right to clean water, clean air. We have a right to fish in the water. We have a right to harvest food in that water, and the water is dying. So I have to give it back to you to say, okay, in your ignorance, you need to look more. Okay.
Has the net effect of the casino industry been positive or negative for the tribes?
Oh boy, all of us are rich now, right? Before it was all we got paid off and we all have this money. Not. Our casinos are, people have approached me and, those casinos. The casinos are an enterprise. And I would say, and I can say this with confidence, what they fund is our health and welfare on the reservation. Our medical, our mental, our ICWAC, which is Indian Child Welfare, because we wanted to stop the stealing of our children. As we see today, people are stealing children. Or we incarcerate them on Bainbridge Island. Right? That's it. Anything else? Krista? Can you come? I've asked one of my children, the children from our tribe, to come and put this robe on me. This is what she needs to do for her elder. I don't have the big robe you saw that's at Burke Museum. I am knitting, I am weaving one that's taken me 10 years.
Okay.
This is Krista. Hannah, her daddy's here. Would you get my hat for me, please?
Oh, your hat? Okay. Oh,
That's okay.
I'm so sorry.
Don't be sorry. You're good. I want you to give this young lady a round of applause. Thank you, Krista. You can sit down. Our time is coming short. They said I need to do this. You are seeing me for the first time now. When I step into my people's way and step into being who I am as a tribal elder, as a tribal member, I do change. My whole countenance, everything that I do, but it visually changes everything. Every day we don't walk around like this. We don't live in teepees. We don't live in longhouses anymore. But once upon a time, we had great potlatches. And a potlatch is something I'll just share with you shortly, that all the tribes would come together and trade up and down the coast from village to village to a certain site, and they have a great house. You know Chief Seattle's great house, Longhouse, Chief Self, that ground. Well, there were others. And we would come together and we'd bring our goods. We'd bring our goods to trade. We'd come for matrimony. We'd come to celebrate people's lives and deaths. What is an interesting part of this is the most wealthy, those who had the most, who had a better hunting season, who had more of a harvest, would come, and there was this great competition. And they would come to give it away. And they distributed it to everybody that came. You see that great robe that I was wearing in the brochure? It would take the village women many, many months, probably not as many years as it's taken me, because they all worked on it, and then they would go with the highborn, and then they would cut it up as a symbol of honor to their people, of something so precious that they would take away a piece of them and their village. They would cut the robe into small pieces and give it away to their people. They would distribute the food. They would distribute everything. The spirit of that lives today. On the first journey to Bella Bella, I got off over in Vancouver Island, and I was tired and I was hungry. And I was kind of alone. Everybody seemed to be discussing very hotly about what's going to go on. Now I'm sitting on a log, and this young lady came down and she said, "Kaya, grandmother, are you hungry? Mm-hmm. Are you tired? Mm-hmm. Do you need a shower? Mm-hmm. She said, "Would you come with me?" And I said, "Mm-hmm." I got up. I didn't know who she was. I went with her. The government there had built her a great big house in the model of the non-native, with no resources to keep it up. So in your eyes or in other people's eyes, it looked pretty ratty. It looked pretty run down. I was raised that way, so I felt at home. I went into her house, and she gave me a towel that had been used, I don't know, 1,000 times. It was pretty thin. And she said, "Excuse me." She said, "But you can use my shower. I'll find something for you to eat." I could tell by her surroundings that she didn't have much, and I was grateful. And I went into the shower, and I used the towel that she gave me, which was very thin. Came out, refreshed. Sat down. She said, "Please sit here, Kaya." Sat down, and she came out of the kitchen, and she brought this great big pot of cockles. I don't know if you know what cockles are, but to us it's very precious. Clams. big pot of these wonderful cockles, big cockles. And she sat it down in front of me, and she came in with some of her homemade bread, and she proceeded to apologize. This is all I have. My life is built on that. My life is built on that generosity of receiving all that she has. I sat there and we laughed and we giggled, and I ate all those cockles without any guilt. I can tell you over and over again the generosity up and down the coast on both the American side and the other side. Stories just like that. I can tell you stories that would make you cry also, where the big yachts would come by and try to swamp us. But I also can tell you that today, thanks to Big, I think, we'll call out the Coast Guard, and they go out and they tell those big boats, the canoes are coming, the canoes are coming. Stay out of their way. So they watch out, or they go out somewhere, or they delay. I'm not quite sure. We just don't see as many of those big boats out there anymore. I mean the big freighters. They're as big as this building right here. They're huge. Go to Canada last year. Went up there, and the Canadian government sent their Coast Guard, and they escorted us all the way. There is hope for humanity, and I've never forgotten that. I've come from a very humble background, and like my grandmother, when I was raised, my grandpa was a Shaker minister. That's, let's see, I don't want to offend you, but the traditional religions of America came, the Christians and whatever, as my ex-mother-in-law would say, and the Catholics. And so the Shaker Church is a combination of that. I did a paper on it. And so he was the minister for that. But what I remember being in there was sitting with all the old women would sit in the circle after the sermon from Matthew or somebody, and we'd sit around and they'd pray to heal you. They'd pray and shake over you. And the sound of their voices singing and singing. You hear the chants when you come, and they say, well, they don't have any words. Well, yes, we do. But nobody ever challenges the Dalai Lama when he chants, right? None of you do. So we have our songs, and some of them are chants. We chant. It fills up your very spirit. I remember sitting in that little church. He became minister because he started to drink too much, and then he had a spirit quest, and his creator said, Lakistam, when the lightning strikes that tree, your life will be changed and you will be the leader of people. It was a big cedar tree, and the lightning came and struck that cedar tree in half. It sat right outside the church. And from that day forward, he became a leader and on the first council. Now, my grandmother lost her husband because they took away his land, 85 acres, because he gave his land to his brothers. So then he probably died of heartbreak. I have letters of him writing to the President of the United States saying, I'm only a poor Indian man and I don't have any money to pay these taxes you want to charge me. And it's on the tribal, and then he passed. And then my grandmother was left. She had 13 children in a house, no water, no lights, no income. So we would go out together. Some people said, "Oh, Darlene, you're a master weaver." No, I'm not a master weaver. I weave. If anybody was a master, it was my grandmother and my grandmother's grandmother, because they knew how to use the land and go collect the things to make the baskets. And I respect that tree. When I go to the tree, I pray. When I take part of the bark, I pray. I thank the tree for what it's giving to me. But she'd get those little baskets and we'd row across to Port Gamble, and then she'd sell them for 25 cents to just buy something to eat. And most of what we ate was off the land. And it brings me to the current day, to my own children. I have 4. Recently, now that they're becoming elders themselves, "Mom, I think we were poor. I think we were poor. Weren't we poor?" And so realization had come to her. I said, "Yes, we were." She says, "Well, I never felt poor. What is poor?" I thought, well, okay, this is ignorance. You're 55 years old. What do you mean, what's poor? She wanted to know how we survived, and I explained a little bit. I said, there was no reason for a child to have to understand that. What she needed was what? And you know this answer now. She needed family. She needed to have something to eat, a place to sleep, because we didn't have lights and water. And I didn't realize it then. I lived in Hansville, and there were all these millionaires that owned half of Seattle, and there I was up in the shack, up in the Buck Lake, in this shack with no lights and water, and I did everything by hand, and I mean scrubbed it like this with maybe your great-grandmother's scrubbed like this, and I collected rainwater. So when the world ends, you want to find me, I guarantee it. We'll eat, we'll be clean. So I don't have much of a patience with people who don't do those two things, feed their children and stay clean. Because I do have my standards, and that's the two of them. So my children are beginning to dawn on them that, yes, in fact, we were really, really, really impoverished. And when I was little, we didn't have the medical attention. So when I got sick and I couldn't survive it, they had to take me to Cushman in Puyallup, was where they could go to the Catholic hospital there. I was in the berry fields when I got polio, and I went there, and they brought me over to Cushman. In my lifetime, I've experienced what I said to you before. And I want to pay honor to my mother and all the other mothers and fathers who suffered during that time. Cultural depression that took them. The old myth of the drunken Indian, the poor, slovenly thing that's crawling along the sidewalks. Those were my mothers and fathers then. They couldn't get a job. Nobody wanted to talk to them. They weren't welcome into anybody's house. They were taking our children away. That's in my lifetime, and especially in their lifetime. And they endured it. I lost my mother, and many of us lost our mothers and fathers very, very early. So there's a lot of orphans in the sense of the non-native world. What we did was stop people from taking our children and developed ICWAC, Indian Child Welfare, and said, you cannot, it's against the law for you to take our children. We will stop you. And we did. If you want to adopt a Native American child, don't try. Just bring that child over to the reservation and say, who do I talk to? Where's the chairman? This child is Native American and I didn't need to bring him home. When I was doing that work in college, I was at Lower Columbia College too. I'm sorry, we'll see. But I was there for 13 years. And so the work there was that the judges said, oh yeah, sure, darling, just go in there and get their next friend court. And so I found many children to go home that were taken away and got them to their rightful families. So although all of that was going on, let me tell you, there are people like you here that say, okay, sure, Darlene, that sounds good. Do that. Find them their house. The judges, the lawyers, the priests, the grocery man who looked the other way when I was stealing his candy as a kid. I mean, it goes on and on. I am grateful for those voices that spoke when we had no voice. So I stand tall on your ancestors, because those people helped me survive, so that my children can say, who all have master's degree, I think we were poor. Weren't we poor, Mom? Yes, we were very poor in money. In money only. Questions? A prayer.
Read the book Lame Deer, or Need Him or Know a Story.
Yes, reindeer. He was a reindeer. That's Rudolph, right? Lame deer. He was a great warrior. Very wise. Most of the books and most of the patriarchal society, you will read a lot about Native American men. Remember? The colonists came and they inhabited this land, but their culture said only men counted. Everybody else was witches. So your books, those great men, I do not want to take it away from them, but women, you do not hear. So that is part of the reason that my heart is full today, is that I'm sitting here. I am woman. Should I break out in the Diane Ross song, I'm a woman? Because truly, if you thought there was some oppression going on in the world, being a woman was no cup of tea. So your history books are full of beautiful, beautiful Indian men. There's still a lot of them out there. And my son is one of them, and they are gorgeous. They're wonderful looking. And they're out there dancing right now in Puyallup, lifting their hands up to the ancestors, praising everybody on the floor at the protocol is what we call it, where the canoe families come. And when I sit in the elder's chair and I look at the children's faces, they're not looking at families that are drunk. These are fathers that are allowed to be men, holding their children close to their hearts and dancing with them, running around on the floor and introducing them, giving them names. I just witnessed the naming for Connie McLeod. What pride, you could see that pride, you could witness that glory of knowing their identity, having that basic feeling that I belong. I belong somewhere, and together we have that knowledge. That's the value of what's going on. That's the value of the powwow. I tell you, for many years I was lost in my early life. But then I started to attend powwows. So I thank my sisters and brother across the nation who brought the powwows out here, which is a whole different culture. We've kind of crowded them out lately, but every once in a while you'll see a powwow. They have, let me tell you, you go to a National Indian Conference back, in the mid-country, you see those. Oh man, those Cheyenne and those Sioux men and women. Your heart just fills up because they have identity. And I'm seeing a mixture of the all nations canoes now, and they come out there and they're singing. We have people from Samoa, right? We even had people from Italy coming to share there. We've had people coming from so many countries singing and dancing with the canoe nations. They're the urban Indian, you don't know about those, see, they're everywhere. The urban Indians on Title IV, they said, okay, the Native American tribe said, we need more because we have too many lost children. So they developed for the urban Native American who are away from their tribes to try to gather them up again and show them that they have identity somewhere. So you have the Indian Ed programs in your school. That's part of it. So that program has saved so many, and what it didn't give them very much money, but it gave Native Americans an identity. They can identify who they are. Before, they would just shun all of us off in the schools, but now you go out there to Wolfley or to most of the schools here, and they invite us to come in and dance, and we're willing to share that. I bring my weaving there. All right. You want to know about me? Go ahead. Hit me. Go ahead. Don't be shy. What's your questions about me now? Me.
So why did you decide to become a trustee at the college?
That's cute. I like it. Okay. I had an elder come to me, Ted George, and we just celebrated him down at the tribe. He's in his late 80s now. And he called, went down to the elder center, and he says, Snooky, I want you to come talk to me. And elder calls. I might be an old woman, but the elder calls, I go. So he starts telling me about this committee. He said, they've given me a call, and they said they really want me to be on it, but I don't want to. He says, I don't want to be there. He says, I've been thinking about it. He says, I think you should go do that. And I said, I don't want to go on any committee where my voice, I said, I just kind of fought back. I said, I want to go there and go pedal water. I am not going to go anywhere where I'm going to have a voice and it goes out there and it's going to be stopped and some guy is going to say, oh, well, yeah, that's a nice idea. And I was ignorant in not knowing how to get my way through there a little bit. So he persisted. And I said, okay, Uncle, I need to know more. He said, I'll send some people to see you then. So he sent Alice Tracy. She talked to me. She was the mayor of Bainbridge Island. Nice lady, kind of strong. And so she talked to me about it. She said, oh, no, you're going to be fine. She said, you just come and you will have a voice. I said, you have to understand, my platform is I will always fight for this disenfranchised, always, whether it be faculty, because I worked in a community college for all those years at Lower Columbia College and taught professors and did all sorts of things in life. But I said, okay, and then they sent somebody else. Trying to remember who that person was. But she stuck in my mind, and I said, okay, I'll go and I'll talk to the president. So I went, and David there, and we really like to have you come to there. And so I said, okay, but I must have a voice. Native people have to have a voice because I don't want to just stand for Native American. I do not want to be your Indian expert. Oh, fine. So I accepted the post. Then they didn't tell me that I had to go sit in front of the Senate and the governor had to approve me. So there I am sitting there in the front of the Senate going, and Loretta Sepinen, who used to work for the state, she said, oh, but it's okay, Darlene. It's just the senators there. They're going to ask you some questions. And I said, what? I don't know anything. I'm just a humble old person. And she says, well, tell them about yourself or something. And I said, oh, Lord. See, I worked with her. She was the feminist fighter down in Lower Columbia College, and she's Dr. Sepinen. I said, okay. So I relaxed and sat there, and so all the people, there's two other people, and so they sat there, and their questions came at them, and I went, oh my God. I'm just shaking like I was when I came in here. And then the senator, and I'm trying to remember his name, Chan, he's an Asian American senator. Yeah, and he just took over the panel. He said, I've been reading your resume and your background, and I know some of what's going on with you, and I know about your life. I have experienced what you have experienced. I know what you went through to try to struggle to get that GED. I know what you had to do to live in an impoverished way. I understand it and I lived it, he said. And he just kept on like that for about a half hour and going, well, am I ever going to get to talk? Well, I didn't get to talk, except to say I vow that I will uphold the OC. And come to find out, he was raised on the streets until he was 5. Remember those gifts? I'm going to tell you about that now. And his life was horrible until a kind, non-Asian person took him and adopted him and gave him an education and put him on a path that he could serve people. But he never forgot the people. You want to know about somebody who's standing in your stead? Look in their background and see if they have had to stand for the people. And he did. Okay. I see people looking at their watches, so I'm over time. Is that it? Okay. So I'll quit this really quickly. So that's how I became trustee, and I was pretty much forced into it. Anyway. Okay. You must stand. Now, lift your hands up and just reflect on life. Bring them peace, bring them power. Creator, bless them all in this room and everyone that come here tonight. Provide them with the strength and the power to continue their good work. We stand in a sacred way, humbled by the fact that we have life and food. We're humbled to be alive and to exist. Thank you, Creator, for all of those gifts, because the gifts come to us every day, in every way. Oho.
Darlene, thank you so much for being here this evening. Thank you for the honor, for sharing your stories, and for educating us all.